Hi, hello, and welcome to the video. I'm your host OTM. This is Overthinking Media, where we overthink all things anime, gaming, cinematic, and entertaining. Where in today's video of the Beauty of Beastars, we're looking at the pup and the deer. The scene opens with Louis informing Legoshi that Zoe will be replacing Tem in the performance, after which Louis begins running lines with Zoe. The Zoe reveals he doesn't actually know the lines yet. Angered by this, Louis berates Zoe. During the beratement though, Kai barges in, wanting the role, only to be told he's been reassigned to the stage crew, which leads to a confrontation between Kai and Louis, forcing Legoshi to intervene, showing his fangs and resulting in Kai storming off. Fascinated by this action, Louis confronts Legoshi on the fact that he is a carnivore, as well as telling him to meet him later that night to rehearse the lines after hours. So, what is the scene about? This scene is about showing how much power Louis holds in the drama department, and overall just in the school in general. Even though it is clear Zoe didn't actually want to take Tem's role, feeling pressured by Louis, he agrees to. The department even has Kai, the runner-up to the role, but Louis made the decision to make someone else the water spirit, whether they wanted to be or not. As well as showing us how Louis has a much more aggressive, demanding, narcissistic side, expecting the same level of perfectionism from everyone else he expects from himself, regardless of how impossible that is, and looking down on anyone that doesn't meet this expectation, while also giving us a more expansive look at Kai and his personality, that being loud, boisterous, and quick to anger, which resulted in forcing Legoshi to intervene to block Kai's attack, reinforcing Legoshi's belief on where he belongs in the pecking order. Actor's safety first, that's the job of the stagehand, and all that. It's his job to protect Louis, despite the fact that he is a carnivore and far more powerful than Louis. It shows that despite Kai's front to act powerful and dominant, as soon as he's confronted by Legoshi, he backs out, dismissing it as if it was his idea. And it's also about Louis being intrigued and fascinated by Legoshi and his way of handling situations the way he does. So, let's talk about the symbolism. Looking at the symbolism for the scene is an interesting one, as there are definite scenes where the symbolic intent is obvious, and it was clearly animated the way it was to get across the message they wanted. But in a lot of cases, I think they just animated it the way they did, and the shots just happened to coincidentally display symbolism. For instance, while I don't believe it was intentional, the use of lighting and shade is very prevalent within many shots of the series. If we look at how the scene opens, Zoe is standing in between two windows in the shade. Instead of standing in the light, he stands in the shade, looking down in a very vulnerable looking stance, letting us know that he is not the one with the power in the scene. Legoshi and Louis then enter and stand on either side of the windows, standing so half of them are illuminated by the light, while the other half is in the shadows, whereas Zoe is standing with his back to the light, his face and front engulfed in the shadow. Zoe is not wearing a mask, but Louis and Legoshi are. As Louis turns to Zoe, the camera changes to focus on Louis' literal shadowy side as he looks at Zoe. Louis is not presenting the bright, friendly, perfect side he does to the public, but instead the stern, professional, demanding side he displays to those under his command. This camera angle also shows Zoe as standing in the light of the window now, whereas Louis is standing in the shadow of the wall. Zoe is the hero of the scene, the innocent one, whereas Louis is the villain of the scene, looking down and becoming aggressive with Zoe. And even though Louis is just looking over, due to the height difference and choice of camera position, it can almost be interpreted as Louis symbolically looking down on Zoe. That is until the next shot where Louis literally looks down on Zoe in the split screen. Louis' shot being much more zoomed in, making him appear even more intimidating, whereas Zoe is less zoomed in. On top of that, both these shots are shown from the other's perspective. Zoe is looking up at Louis, making Louis appear far more imposing, but Louis is looking down on Zoe, making him appear weaker. Suddenly, Kai comes crashing through the door, and in the reflection of the mirror, we can see Legoshi's reaction, wanting to be the one in the spotlight. As Kai enters the room, he is bathed in the light of the sun. Turning to look at Legoshi, half of Kai's face becomes bathed in the shadow. Suddenly, Kai has a mask on. Or perhaps this is Kai's true face just creeping through. Kai is trying to step up to Legoshi and act powerful, appearing threatening, which is a false truth in this situation, as Legoshi is inherently more powerful than Kai. We can also see that in the mirror, Legoshi is half bathed in the shade. Despite being a powerful carnivore, Legoshi wears the mask of a gentle creature, going to excuse himself and turning, literally, back to the gentle version of himself. But as he does, Louis tells him to stay, standing in the shade, completely engulfed in the mask of the shade, his professional side, which is on top of the fact that he is standing between the two windows. And with how much shorter Kai is than Louis, Louis is both figuratively and literally looking down on Kai as he lists off his past mistakes. Angered by Louis' words, Kai swings at Louis and Legoshi intervenes. This shot shows Legoshi's tail as poised. He is in a defensive stance, ready to engage if need be, whether he intentionally did so or not. Once again, the camera changes to a split screen from each other's perspective, and once again their faces are split in two, even though the shady side of Legoshi is the side we see, which I believe to be his carnivore side. The way the camera is shot, it's actually his eye on the gentle side that appears more aggressive, which is interesting. There's an interpretation of the reason the light side shows aggression is he is trying to be the stern stagehand. He is putting on the show of being hostile, but the truth is his carnivore side is unbothered by Kai, doesn't really even acknowledge it, though I probably am just reading way too much into this. Fun interpretation though. The camera focuses on Kai's face, however without changing the shot. In the reflection of the mirror behind Kai, we can see Legoshi snarl his fangs, which Kai, quickly realizing he was outmatched and would have lost, tries brushing this off, pretending it was his idea to let things go. This is an amazing use of cinematography, because not only do we get to see Kai's reaction, but you also get to see Legoshi's face morph, while also watching his body language become more tense and hostile, all without changing the camera angle once, or relying on a split screen, including the way that once Kai has backed off, we can see Legoshi looking at Kai in the mirror. Kai is still showing aggression, while Legoshi is almost neutral. He's just gone back to natural reactions. It's so well shot! Looking at the body language between Louis and Legoshi is also very interesting. Despite the fact that Louis is the herbivore and prey in this situation, he is stood straight up, with his chest pushed forward, standing proper, making himself appear larger and more noticeable. Whereas Legoshi, the carnivore and hunter, is hunched over with a timid manner, making himself appear smaller. Which, if you don't know why he does that, go check out my previous video talking about Legoshi and why it's important. If you haven't watched the entire playlist yet, you can hit that little eye in the top corner to go watch the playlist. This is episode 9. Go check out the other episodes. It's kind of important that you kind of get a full grasp. Although you can just watch this episode on its own, it makes less sense. Moving on though, I'm pretty sure this is because of the way the shot uses lighting, but for whatever reason, as Louis does hold Legoshi's tail, it makes his other hand appear much darker than the rest of his fur, and far closer to the colour of Legoshi's fur. However, as the scene continues, the camera changes to a split screen once more, and much like earlier, Louis is shot with a much closer perspective, making him appear significantly bigger than Legoshi. In doing this, the scene quite literally shows us the, I was going to say power struggle, but I don't think struggle is the right word for this situation, but it is the correct term overall. So let's say the scene shows us the power struggle in quotation marks, because I can't think of the correct word, but I do believe power struggle is the correct term. Louis is shot close enough that the entirety of his head can't completely fit into the shot, whereas Legoshi is shot from what would most likely be Louis' actual perspective. Legoshi is a few feet away from the camera. His head, chest and shoulders are visible in the shot, despite the fact that he is bigger than Louis. I also believe the distance in shots had another purpose in the scene. While Louis is very expressive when he wants to be, when he's acting proper, he is very stiff, only relying on his facial features to express his intent and emotions. And for the most part, those are small actions that tell a lot. While a lot can be told about Louis' personality by just how he holds himself, as the watcher, you're never quite sure if it's just a front he's putting on or just a mask. Opposingly, Legoshi speaks a lot through his body language. Almost all his thoughts can be read through how his body reacts. When Louis mentions sneaking into the theatre hall to rehearse, you can see his entire body jolt and move. And, fun tidbit. While I was writing this part of the script on my morning commute on public transport, I had to keep re-watching this scene over and over. And people could see over my shoulder that I was watching this scene over and over, watching a deer pull a wolf closer by the tie. Yeah. And while we're on the tangent, let's do a subscriber check-in real quick. As of making this video, the channel is currently at this many subscribers, which, if you want to join that number of awesome, presumably humans, slap that subscribe button like a successfully strong, salty southern salmon sourly swim singing songs to stay up there with my latest content. First try, yeah! Woo! But for now, back to the video. Much like earlier when Louis grabbed Legoshi's tail, in grabbing his tie and pulling him closer, it shows Louis' want to control. Or at the very least, he believes himself the exception to the rule and superior. He is a herbivore pulling the carnivore in closer to him. And I was originally going to write, he believes he is above danger of being devoured in this section. But considering events we'll talk about later, closer to the end of the season, I don't believe that's true. While I did touch a lot on this in the previous section talking about symbolism, I want to go over just some of the small stuff I kind of overlooked or just skipped or didn't quite fit into that section. When Louis and Legoshi first enter the room, they're stood on either side of the room, separated by the shadow. They are each standing in the window light, divided by a gap, separated by the void. The symbolic distance between them. Okay, yeah, maybe I'm being a bit dramatic there. Plus, Legoshi is actually standing 1 foot in the shade. But hey, maybe that could be interpreted as Legoshi trying to close the gap between them. Whether consciously or not. Probably not though. Probably just how they shot the scene and they animated him to stand there and there was no deeper meaning or anything. Still fun to think about though. However, if we look at Kai, as he barges in, he appears relatively large in the shot. He comes through the door, he seems pretty average size, appearing relatively imposing. However, as soon as he steps into the view of the mirror, the reflection of him can be seen as smaller in comparison to Legoshi. However, because of him still being boisterous, he still appears relatively big. But once Legoshi intervenes, the camera is shot from behind him, portraying Kai as much smaller than Legoshi, now that he's been knocked back down to size. So, what does this tell us about the characters? Despite how much I have to say about Kai, Louis is probably the most of note in this scene. Earlier on in the episode, Legoshi comments on how put together Louis is, how perfect he is, and it also shows us how much power he holds, giving that he can casually and physically get aggressive with Zoe with no fear of consequences, but also how vulnerable he is and how he reacts to Kai's punch, genuinely being caught off guard and only being unharmed because Legoshi stepped in. You can see it on his face during the wide shot. There is a mixture of anger in his eyes, but it's mostly shock and confusion, with his body language also displaying this. He has broken character, he has let the mask slip, he has showed his true emotions. However, his anger quickly gets overwhelmed by the sheer fascination and awe of Legoshi. Being unable to hide his genuine emotion, every action of Legoshi further intrigues him. Not concerned for himself, but instead only wanting to see how the events play out. But being Louis, he quickly snaps back to the mask as soon as he's aware again. Even so, you can hear it in his voice. he can't help himself. He is excited about Legoshi because Legoshi fascinates him. Kai, on the other hand, is very fascinating. And this scene tells us so much with so little. It tells us more about Kai and how, despite wanting to be one of the spirits, Kai has a history of messing up during performances, giving us an insight into how Kai sees the world. Which, here's the interesting thing. While writing this, I legitimately couldn't remember if Kai ever reappeared in the series again. I was pretty sure he was the one talking to Legoshi on the fly deck in a later episode, but I wasn't sure. Turns out, I was right. Kai has a few lines in episode 2, a monologue in episode 3, and a few lines in episode 5. However, after that, he only appears as a background character without lines in a few episodes. The next time he speaks is in season 2, episode 6, and that's only to deliver 2 lines, 2 short lines, and that's it. In total, Kai has about 5 minutes of on-screen time the entire 2 seasons, which is including the first episode. And of that, he's probably only talking for about 2 of those 5 minutes. And for the most part, that is all the information we ever get about Kai. Beyond episode 1 and this scene, the only additional information we ever receive about Kai is that he was abandoned at birth and he sometimes eats larvae. So, considering this is the only time we really get to know him in the 2 seasons he's been in, what do we know about him? Actually, no. Let's do this another way. I want you to think about another series. Could be anything at all. Could be anime, movie, TV show, live action, video game, or even a book. Any of it. Just think about it. Now, I want you to think about a tertiary character that only has about 2 minutes of on-screen time. And there are a few criteria for this character. 1, they have to be a background character. 2, they have to in no way forward the plot. And 3, no additional information about them can be given from other characters. Or rather, you cannot use any information you were told about them which didn't have the character in the scene or didn't have another character directly talking to them. I'll give you a minute to think of a character. Okay, got one? Now, tell me about that character. Leave a comment if you want. How much do you actually know about this tertiary background character? Now, let's talk about Kai, shall we? Kai is a mystery, actually. There are multiple things Kai can be. Kai might be a hot-headed, egotistical kid who thinks he's so much grander than he is, believing he is a great actor who deserves the role of the water spirit due to being the runner-up, looking out for himself and trying to turn Tem Death into his own advantage, lashing out in anger when Louis mentions his past failures because he wants to be seen as amazing. This would paint Kai as being self-serving, willing to use others' tragedy to get ahead, and extremely childish, only backing off when Legoshi intervenes because he knows he'll lose and it will damage his reputation, making him look bad. However, it could also be seen that Kai wanted the role because he wanted to make up for his past mistakes, realizing that the water spirit would have to be recast. Though tragic, Kai tries to step up and prove himself as growing from his past mistakes. But when Louis brought those up and brandished Kai as just those failures, Kai became angry due to the fact that he knew he wasn't the same person as those previous shows. However, when Louis brought them up and brandished Kai as just those failures, Kai became angry due to the fact that he knew he wasn't the same person as he was in those previous shows, that he had put in the work to be a better actor. But Louis only sees him as that screw up, and because of that, Kai's dream was taken away from him because of the choices someone else made for him, which, rightfully so, gives him a valid reason to be angry. But once Legoshi does intervene, despite still being angry, he realizes he has lost the battle and backs off. He realizes his anger has got the best of him, and he realizes he's messed up. However, he is still angry and tries to verbally lash out, trying to at least hurt Louis like Louis hurt him with his words, and leaves. Or perhaps Kai is actually a far more insecure person than he shows. Kai presents as an arrogant, smart-mouthed, bossy individual, but in fact that could just be a defensive mechanism to help protect him from appearing weak in a school and a world full of powerful carnivores, that no matter how much he trains, there will be others who are stronger than him just because who they were born as. Legoshi will always be more powerful than Kai, no matter how much he trains. And because of this fear of being weak, Kai presents as a loudmouth young man who has no weaknesses. So when Louis does mention Kai's past mistakes, trying not to appear vulnerable, Kai resorts to violence to show just how powerful he really is, to hide just how scared he actually is. Then, when confronted with Legoshi's aggression, he backs down because he realizes he has bit off more than he can handle, quickly returning to the facade of being invulnerable. All this can be inferred from just the 2 minutes and 17 seconds of screen time, all for this tertiary character. Paru and Studio Orange managed to create a flushed out character with a defined personality for a character that didn't need it. Yes, Kai does reappear in later episodes, but he's never the main or secondary character. While the scene is helpful to flush out Kai, it wasn't necessary to the overall story. And every single line he delivers in the entire series could have been cut or relegated to another character, and it still would have worked and made sense. So yeah, I respect the fact that they took the time to include him in the anime adaptation. So yeah, moving on. Zoe. Well, Zoe is literally, well, I think at least, Zoe is literally just a pun of being a literal scapegoat for the drama department. Also, can we just take a moment to talk about how Louis looks down on Zoe, and as he talks to him as a goat, he says the only thing they're good for is eating paper. Does that count as discrimination in the BU? Like, that's a harmful stereotype, right? Like, that is looking down on Zoe, and that is discrimination, right? Perpetuating harmful stereotypes. That could be a fun topic for a video. And Legoshi is fascinating because this is technically, chronologically, the first time we see him bare his fangs in the series. And in the words of Louis, he's baring his fangs to avoid conflict, which is an entire topic I want to do a dedicated video to as well. The paradox of using violence to avoid violence. But even in the scene when Legoshi does bare his fangs, we don't actually see Legoshi baring his fangs. We see the reflection of Legoshi baring his fangs. The false image of him. Or perhaps the true version of him. Maybe it's even a version he sees when he looks in the mirror. There is so many different ways to interpret this scene, it's amazing. Or maybe it's even a direct parallel to who he is. Being both the version in the world and the version in the mirror. Being a pacifist by defending Louis, but doing so by showing his fangs and being aggressive. He is both subservient and dominant. It's awesome! Unlike the previous scene, this doesn't really tell us much about the larger world of Beastars though. So instead, let's just jump directly into little things because I love this bit. Of course, first and foremost, as always, mirrors! They use reflective shots in this anime, and oh my god, it's beautiful, I love it. Give some credit to the reflections, give credit to the animation team who did the time to deal with reflections, because reflections are important in this scene. It looks so good, it's so fantastic. I love mirrors in anime. I love mirrors in just general, because like the amount of work that's going to use mirrors, so they don't get the camera or the shot or... so good. Then there's Tem's outfit just hanging on the rack to be resized. Because of course it would be. They get Zoe in, they need to be remeasured. It makes sense. There's also the worn out bricks between the windows, the wear and tear on the door behind Kai from the different places different animals close the door, the faces the drama students make, and especially the rabbit's face in reaction to getting her ears grabbed. The way Legoshi is able to intersect Kai's punch because he is a wolf with the reflexes of one, as well as the genuine shock on Louis' face. The genuine fascination we can see on Louis' face after Legoshi bares his fangs. The way you can see all the thoughts running through Louis' mind, and how this is Louis' way of showing sheer excitement. Despite how little reactions he had, you can see the sheer excitement on his face. Also how Kai looks away instinctively for a second to show his acknowledgement of Legoshi as superior. And of course, the statement made at the scene, which alludes to future events. That was a good little thing. Cool. But yeah, that is where we're going to leave today's video, I think. If this is the first video of mine you are watching, I ask just one thing. Leave a comment telling me where you found my video. Was it on your homepage? Was it the next autoplay video? Did it appear in your recommended videos? Did someone send it to you? Was it mentioned in someone else's video? Wherever you came from, I'm fascinated to know. So let me know. And if we look at the Overthinking meter, we can see that in the first 18 minutes and 8 seconds of the series, we have overthought Beastars for that amount of time. Thanks for watching, and feel free to check out some of the other awesome content I made currently on screen. Bye.